When this horse arrived, he had no mental directability. He was chaotic. He was defensive towards the physical pressure of the lead rope. He was defensive towards human pressure. He would default to either flying backwards or pushing his way through scenarios without actually seeing the triggering things. A crucial aspect in the horse learning how to learn is to be able to separate out mental directability from physical movement. Most of the time, I find people are trying to contain, block, or prevent movement rather than helping recognize if they redirect the horse's thought, then they can influence the future movement. The horse is always communicating. It's a matter of if the human's listening. The direction of the ears, where the eyes are looking, the angle of the head, neck, and shoulder will tell you where the next step is going to occur when you ask for it. But most people are waiting, ignoring the subtle signs before they're actually addressing the horse's ask. And so things tend to consistently escalate into unwanted responses rather than having entire conversations with a very minor degree of back and forth until the horse can gently let it go without being triggered, concerned, anticipative, or defensive. When this horse first arrived, I couldn't touch him without his skin being very taut and him being very concerned, him being able to express with his lips. When I touch him and not being concerned about me bending underneath him is a reflection of the mental and emotional shift he's had. So the goal of this is not about the tire. It's about helping the horse learn how to offer a try and think through what it is that I'm asking. And even if he offers something I don't ask, that he can let it go in a reasonable manner to then come up with something new to try. This isn't about the tire or this moment. This is trailer loading. This is water crossing. This is lining up for the mounting block. This is ponying. This is everything that we will ask of the horse in the future, presented in a very small, short, specific conversation so that the horse can mentally keep track as he is learning how to learn, and then he can retain. What I find happens is that most people get so fixated on the act, in this case of stepping in the tire, that they don't recognize the horse's feedback. They ignore it, and then he has to escalate his, we'll say, questions. Taking the time to help the horse learn to think through things and giving him boundaries of what works and what doesn't, but offering corrections that are not chasing, driving, yielding, making, containing, blocking, or criticizing is crucial to help the horse recognize that there will be feedback and there will be boundaries, but he does not have to be fearful or defensive towards the human's communication. Most horses I see accomplishing tasks are doing so as a lesser of two evils type of response rather than an actual thinking, learning, and retaining. They can become familiar with a task and seem compliant, but then when you move, let's say, where the location of the task is, it feels like people are starting completely over because the horse never actually thought through the communication. The other big thing I see is that most people don't acknowledge the horse's try. In this case, when he put one foot in, often folks will immediately try and get the second foot in or get the horse to walk all the way through the tire rather than breaking things up to give the horse time to mentally process and work through that his try was acknowledged. The more we offer that releases initially, the longer the horse is willing to mentally stay in try. If you notice, as I was touching him, he mentally kind of checked out for a moment. It took very little with the rope to draw the thought back in. Now he's starting to see the tire. So again, there are many horses that will go through the tasks, but they don't actually see what is in front of them. You can see the old rock back to go forward pattern that's strong in him. And so that tells me that even though he's trying, there's a bit of rigidity in here and anticipation. So that last response was more of a yielding and obedience. And so I ask him to look and step to break the physical resistance and heaviness that is gently increasing as he becomes anticipative. These are the subtle moments, again, that people are waiting for the horse to go flying backwards or dramatically respond before they are doing something. If you notice, he wants to tuck himself in on the normal side for leading. These are all opportunities for him to separate out looking and stepping. We'd like to move the horse in 5 different, we'll say, sections of his body: his head, neck, shoulders and front legs, rib cage, and hindquarters. If we can't independently influence each of those, the horse is carrying rigidity, brace, and tension. And this then leads to issues when we try to do things such as this scenario where we're trying to be specific. If you notice, as I'm standing on his right side, the angle of his right shoulder aiming at me, leaning towards me. So changing the thought to the opposite direction so that he can start to let go with that strong push on that right shoulder allows him to take a straighter step rather than aiming at me. I didn't have to chase the hindquarters. I didn't have to move my feet. I didn't have to drive him around because of our previous sessions and redefining what the pressure of the lead rope meant, and him learning to start to have mental directability separate from physical directability. This is something that is completely overlooked 100% in horse training. Very rarely do I ever get a horse who literally sees what's going on around him. And most horses that have been through long-term training programs are completely defensive to all forms of pressure, but they've learned to either contain their triggers so that they don't have increased human pressure, or they are a complete wreck and constantly fleeing. If you notice, he had to work through a few different tries before he could offer that right foot that initially was constantly aiming at me. So again, we're going to offer a spatial release by moving away. But as we move away, we want to separate out, can the horse actually look? And then can we start to step? Most people are not specific in their leading. It's kind of like they hope that the horse will follow their body and randomly figure out what they want, rather than thinking of the specificity that they might use, let's say with a car, where they turn the steering wheel before they add the gas pedal. The more specific I can be with the horse from the very beginning in every single interaction from the ground, the more confidence he has towards my communication as I'm sitting in the saddle. But I find people on the ground feel like they are more balanced and confident, and so they get less specific in their communication because they don't feel it is as important as when they're sitting on the horse at the mercy of his movement. Each of these segments has been broken up with a spatial release, and then we might come back and revisit. We're looking for him letting go of old patterns, such as his initial wanting to look at me, and then the relative ease that he let that go. That tells me that there was value in what I previously did. He gets distracted again, so we draw the thought back to center, and you notice then there becomes the release with the ears. He sees the tire, and he offers a try. If you notice, there was no dragging on him. There was no pulling him through. There's no trying to contain him afterwards. There are many horses that will comply with a task, but then afterwards have increased tension and fleeing behavior. The after tells you a lot more about what the horse experienced during. So the more we can be aware to check in, I give him his space to let him think, and then I go and do something completely unrelated. Again, this was a horse when he arrived who couldn't stand still. So doing something out of context, like picking up the foot when the horse doesn't expect it, is a great sort of mental reset to help the brain learn to become present. And it's also feedback to me that after we did the tire, if he was rigid and braced, he would not be able to softly pick up a hind foot and stay balanced. We changed the thought from where he's at, asking him to check back in. He goes to move. He can't quite find it yet. We pause that mindless movement to change those old habits and patterns, watch his right ear, right eye. The minute that he looks and sees, then we step away.